Hi, my name is Bruce Kittle.
Hi, my name is Tanisha Evans.
Hi, my name is Ivy Johnson.
And you're watching GPS 19.
And we're sliding into another show.
Alrighty. Are we ready to rock and roll? Are we ready to rock and roll? Alrighty, so I'm going to call the Groton Board of Education meeting to order. Today is December, I'm going to put on my glasses because I can't read, December 17th, and it's about 6:10, and this is our regular, this is our regular Board of Ed meeting, actually a week early because we are then going into the holiday season. So actually the board has only had two meetings. One was a working meeting, which we call the Committee of the Whole, and then our voting meeting, which is our regular board meeting. So I'm going to start by having us say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oops. I know. Well, I could do a little dance, but that might scare you. All right, and before we get much further into our agenda, if you notice, we are going to have a presentation, and I'm going to have Dr. Grenier sort of set the stage for us. And because of our presentation that I, for one, am very excited about hearing and listening to, is that we have made the rest of our agenda somewhat light so that we could spend and not feel like we were going to be here until like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, unless you guys want to. I am kind of fun. But hearing that that's probably not what people want, I'm going to give it to Dr. Grenier.
Great, thank you. Well, we have a chore in front of us because of our participation in the Magnet School Assistance Program grant, which actually provided the funds for us for our two middle schools. We have been working with Learn, and the assistant director, Kate Erickson of Learn, is here, and we were really struggling with exactly how to make sure that the two elementary schools that are going to be built, and Sam will talk a little bit about the work of the architects in a minute, but one of them, as you know, is what the state defines as a diversity school, and that's why the town is receiving 80% reimbursement. So that school must be within the racial balance limits established by the state. And then the other school, which would be built at the West Side site, will be just a regular magnet school, but of course that school will also have to be racially balanced. So Kate Erickson introduced us to a really terrific speaker, and Susan and I went and heard him. He is a scholar from the Century Foundation, and his name is Rick Kallenberg, and he is a scholar who has really looked at school integration, especially based upon socioeconomic level, and has lots of advice for us to ensure that both of our two new elementary schools will be both racially and socioeconomically balanced. And from my interactions with Rick so far, I can assure you you're going to really benefit from his wise advice and his scholarly approach to this. So it's a delight to introduce Rick Kallenberg, who hails from, not locally. Rick, where do you reside?
I'm right outside of Washington, D.C.
Washington, okay. And hopefully that little remote is going to work for you. And
I'm not sure if you're trying.
Well, wonderful. Well, it's a delight to be here, and I'm so appreciative of any school board that is willing to grapple with these difficult issues of racial and economic isolation, because it's very easy simply to avoid these questions and go on the way that we've always been been proceeding, but I think there's 50 years of research to suggest that one of the best things we can do for children is give them, oh, it does work? Okay. All right, well, let's go back to Plan A then.
Okay. Oh, no, it's off.
Oh.
Oh. It's a test. Just
Yes.
we want to make sure that, you know, you're as comfortable as possible.
Okay, good. Well,
Welcome to my world.
okay, so this is working, good. So I was just saying, I think this it's a really important issue, and I commend you for being willing to grapple with it and figure out ways to allow children of different backgrounds to come together to learn, because there is a great deal of research to suggest this is one of the best things we can do, in particular for low-income students, but that all students benefit from experiencing the different backgrounds of peers who can educate one another. So I'm going to talk about socioeconomic integration, which is not the way that the issue of school integration has traditionally been framed. Obviously, going back to Brown versus Board of Education, the emphasis has been on racial integration, which I think remains a very important goal for public education and for communities like this one. But there, as I'll explain in a minute, there are some legal limitations to using race in student assignment. And there is also a lot of evidence to suggest that the economic mix in a school, the mix of wealthier students and less advantaged students, is independently important from an educational perspective. So I'm going to talk about four things this evening. To begin, what is socioeconomic integration? I'm going to talk about some of the research that goes to why educators believe that socioeconomic integration is good for children. I'm going to talk about some of the 100 school districts and charter school chains that are now paying attention to socioeconomic diversity and draw some lessons there. And also talk about the important issues that go on within an integrated school. So if you have the ability to bring children of different races, different economic backgrounds together in a school, that's only the first step, obviously. And then teachers need to be trained, and the leaders in the school, in order to make sure that we capitalize on that diversity and make sure that every student is honored in those schools. So we'll start with the question of what socioeconomic integration is. So it is a public policy designed to improve opportunities for students by considering the socioeconomic status of students in the assignment to particular schools. So socioeconomic status sometimes is defined as eligibility for free and reduced price lunch, and you are all familiar with that concept, obviously, because that's the way the state of Connecticut in part breaks down achievement data. You'll see those who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, which is roughly $45,000 a year for a family of four, or those who are not eligible, who might be thought of as more middle class or more advantaged. Let me cite a couple of examples. Cambridge, Massachusetts has, for a number of years, sought to have a socioeconomic balance in its public schools. About 40% of Cambridge public school students are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. And Cambridge has set a goal that all the schools should be within plus or minus 10 percentage points of that goal. So essentially between 30 and 50% low income. And with that 40% mark, Cambridge is not that far from where you all are with your demographics. There are other school districts that have much higher levels of poverty. in the schools, and I've worked with the Chicago public school system that's 85% low income, and yet they have seen a role for seeking to socioeconomically integrate a subset of their schools, their magnet schools and their selective enrollment schools, with the goal that over time that could encourage more middle-class families to return to the public schools, and then they'd have the chance to make all the schools economically integrated. Wake County, North Carolina, which includes Raleigh and the surrounding suburbs, is another example of a district that's been integrating by socioeconomic status. They were looking at the research, which suggests that concentrations of poverty can present challenges for schools, and so they use magnet schools, and they change the boundaries periodically to reduce concentrations of poverty. I've worked with the Charlotte, Mecklenburg, North Carolina public schools as well, using magnet schools and also boundary changes to achieve economic integration. And another example of socioeconomic integration is Montgomery County, Maryland public schools, right outside of Washington, D.C. And there they use housing policies to promote socioeconomic integration, because housing policy is school policy. When you, in Montgomery County, I'll talk about them a little bit more later, but they have a policy in which when a builder develops a certain number of units, housing units, she sets aside a proportion of those units for low-income and working-class families. And in that way, the neighborhood schools become economically integrated. So the number of school districts that are pursuing this type of policy has expanded over the years. When I started researching this issue back in 1996, I could only find 2 school districts in the entire country that were looking at socioeconomic status as a factor in student assignment. And you can see now by 2016 there are 100 school districts and charter schools that are doing this. These schools are located throughout the country in both so-called red states and blue states. You find these programs in place, and in different parts of the country as well. So the next question is why? Why are school districts going to the trouble of trying to have a socioeconomic mix in their schools? What's the point? And there are really 2 independent goals. The first is to provide all students with the benefits of a diverse learning environment. So all students, whether they're middle class, low income, of whatever race, will benefit from being around students who have different backgrounds. But then the second reason, and kind of the reason that I got into this work, kind of from more of a social justice perspective, is that there are particular harms associated with concentrated poverty. When a school becomes overwhelmingly low income, that can create a difficult learning environment for students. Now, I want to be very clear, because sometimes when people hear me talking about the negative effects of concentrated poverty, they read that to mean that there's something wrong with low-income students, and that's not my point in any sense. It's quite the opposite. It's that low-income students can do extraordinary things if given the right environment. But when we pack all the students who have the greatest needs into particular schools, that isn't providing the optimal environment for students to learn. And I'll talk about that research in a minute. As I mentioned at the outset, we think of integration primarily in terms of race in this country, but there are a couple of reasons why that discussion has expanded to include socioeconomic status as well as race. And indeed, the magnet school program, the federal magnet school program that you all applied to and won the grants in, now emphasizes that school districts should pay attention to both racial integration and socioeconomic integration because both are important. To begin with, there's been an increased emphasis on socioeconomic integration because the Supreme Court has placed limits on the ability of school officials such as yourself to use the individual race of a student in deciding whether he or she is going to go to a particular school. So there was a case in 2007 called Parents Involved Community Schools versus Seattle, in which the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, struck down the use of race in Louisville and Seattle, even though the schools in those cases were using race in a positive sense to integrate rather than to segregate. And at the same time, because there's a strong overlap between economic status and race in our society, using socioeconomic factors can produce a lot of racial diversity indirectly. And so that's part of why a number of school districts who care about racial integration have shifted to socioeconomic status as a factor in admissions, because it's perfectly legal to use economic status. So to give you one example, our graduated income tax obviously treats people differently based on wealth. And so if you're in a higher income bracket, it's perfectly fine for the state to say, we're going to treat you differently and you're going to pay a higher marginal rate. If you tried to do that based on race, there would be big constitutional problems with doing that. And but it's perfectly fine to use socioeconomic status. Having said that, it's also important to recognize the research on this question. So using socioeconomic status in deciding, as a factor in deciding where students will go to school is not just kind of a cute way of getting around the Supreme Court decision, which had said you can't use race. And indeed, there's lots of research going back several decades to suggest that the reason that racial integration had a positive effect on the academic achievement of African Americans, as it did, had nothing to do with the race of classmates per se. It was the socioeconomic status of classmates. So it's not as if there was no research to suggest that African American children benefit from the fact that their classmates have a different pigment. It's not the color. It was rather that low-income students of all races are better off on average when some of their classmates are middle class. So this is in terms of academic achievement, it's a class phenomenon rather than a race phenomenon. Now, to be clear, I'm in favor of racial integration, even apart from whether or not it raises test scores, because schools are about a lot more than test scores. But if we're looking strictly at academic achievement, it's the economic status of the classmates that matters more than the race. And so to give you a couple of examples, in the 1970s, school districts in Boston and school districts in the school district in Charlotte-Mecklenburg both desegregated. And researchers looked at what the academic effects of desegregation were. And in Boston, there were no positive effects for African American students. And in Charlotte, there were very positive effects from racial desegregation. And the difference was that in Boston, it was essentially working class African Americans who were racially integrated with working class whites. The wealthier whites had left for the suburbs by that time. And so, not surprisingly, there was no socioeconomic mixing going on, and there was no academic gain. By contrast, in Charlotte, where they had the suburbs and the city all within one school district. The racial integration involved African American students being in school with upper middle class white students whose families were more highly educated. And there you did see a positive academic benefit. To give you another example, in the Louisville case, which the Supreme Court looked at, there was an effort to integrate solely by race and not by socioeconomic status. And so there was one elementary school, Roosevelt Perry Elementary, that was beautifully integrated by race. It was 50% black, 50% white, and the school was also 100% poor. And that school struggled, even though it was racially integrated, because the academic effects of integration are related more to socioeconomic status than they are to race. And I should have said this at the beginning, but if anyone has questions along the way, I don't want to just be here talking at you, and I would invite a conversation anywhere along the way. So, let me see, did I? Okay. So let me break down these 2 points, that integration benefits all students on the one hand, and also that there are these particular negative effects of concentrated poverty. So the first point has to do with the way in which all students benefit. And there is a lot of research at the higher education level that suggests that when students have different backgrounds, bring different life experiences to the table, that more learning goes on. And more recently, that research has been expanded at the K through 12 level, and researchers are finding the same thing. It boils down to the idea that the diversity makes us smarter, that the learning is deeper and more creative when you have different voices who come together in classroom discussions. In addition, employers are appreciating the way in which a diverse environment, K through 12 environment, can help equip students of all backgrounds to be in a diverse workforce. So the number one reason that employers fire people, they have to fire people, is not that they're incompetent on the job. It's that they can't get along with other people. And it's oftentimes people of different racial backgrounds or different economic backgrounds. And so having the skill to navigate through a diverse educational environment helps prepare students to be better employees. And this is something that lots of employers value. In addition, there are benefits to all students in the sense of strengthening our democracy, something I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. So to illustrate this idea of the benefits of diversity for all students, I like to quote a researcher, Eugene Garcia, who talks about what children bring, what each child brings to the classroom. And he says, when a child comes to a school for the first time, he or she comes with a little suitcase full of experiences, language and culture that he or she had before coming to school. And in the past, there was often a sense that teachers would tell students, keep that suitcase closed. You're going to learn the way, kind of the traditional white middle class way of the way the world works. But today, educators are recognizing that's the wrong approach, and instead, the teacher should invite the student and say, "Welcome. Let's open that little suitcase and see what you have, so you can share, and we can learn from you," which is very empowering for those students to know that they bring an important perspective, a unique perspective, and that's going to be valued by by educators and by other students. So that's the first half of the equation. The second half has to do, as I suggested, with kind of the social justice part of this, which is that segregation is particularly harmful to low-income students. So many of you are probably familiar with the Coleman report from 1966, which was kind of the granddaddy of education studies, and it was commissioned by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to find out why there was a gap in achievement between African Americans and whites. And Coleman went in, and most people expected that the difference would have to do with the dollars spent in predominantly African American schools and the predominantly white schools. But that's not what Coleman found. He did not find that per pupil expenditure was the cause for this academic gap. The two most powerful predictors of how well a student would do academically were, number one, the socioeconomic status of the family that a child came from. So that was the biggest, and remains today, usually in most research, the biggest predictor of how well a student will do, given that high-resourced families can give their children lots of opportunities. But the second biggest predictor, which surprised a lot of people, was the socioeconomic status of your classmates in a school. The classmates mattered, Coleman found. And so there was this important finding in social science research that essentially we set aside for many years and didn't do much about, but is now being examined through these socioeconomic integration programs. If you look internationally, the same thing is true. For those who look at the research on the International Student Assessment, the PISA in science, they find that having advantaged classmates is an advantage for any particular student, holding constant their individual family background. So a lot of you have probably heard about kind of the educational miracle in Finland. Finland used to be in the middle of the pack internationally, and now it leads in many of the international academic competitions. And most researchers suggest that the biggest reason Finland does well is because it has low poverty rates. It supports its children, makes sure that they aren't in poverty. But it's also the case that if you are low income in Finland, you're much more likely to go to a school where many of your classmates are middle class, and you're not isolated in these high poverty schools. Now, we all know of high poverty schools that do well, and the press often will highlight them because it is a very encouraging story when you see a school that maybe is 90% low income and is getting really positive results. And God bless the teachers in those schools and the students who are able to, and the principals who are able to pull this off. But it's also the case that it's extremely rare. So this research looks at which schools are persistently high performing. And it turns out that schools, the lower poverty schools, are 22 times as likely to be high performing as high poverty schools. And so a number of school officials have said, we know it's very, very difficult to make high poverty schools work well. We should support them where we can, but there's another avenue, which is to suggest we don't have to have high poverty schools. We can take steps through choice within the public school system to make sure that we don't have concentrations of poverty in particular schools. So there's that 22-to-1 ratio. In addition, we find that when you look at test scores, that middle class and low income students do worse in poverty concentrated schools. So this is the results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which, as you know, is considered kind of the gold standard of testing, stronger than many of the state tests. And this is fourth grade math results. The top line, the orange line, are the middle class students, those not eligible for free and reduced price lunch. And the blue line are the economically disadvantaged students, those who are eligible. And as we go from left to right, we're going from low poverty schools or more affluent schools to higher poverty schools. And you can see that if you take, for example, the low income students, there is an almost 20-point gap between low income students who are in high poverty schools, where 100% of their all their classmates are low income, versus those in more affluent schools. And as a rule of thumb, every 10 points on the National Assessment for Educational Progress is about a year worth of learning. So, so low-income students who have the chance to go to less poverty-concentrated schools are almost 2 years ahead of low-income students who are in the high-poverty schools in fourth grade. So there's a big gap that develops. Now,
does that get bigger? Does
I'm
that
sorry?
gap, as the kids get older, does that gap get larger and larger?
well, it definitely gets larger for low-income students and middle-class students in
Right.
the aggregate. I haven't seen the data. That's a good question. I haven't seen this taken out to the high school level. But we know that certainly low-income students and middle-class students see the gap increase over time. I don't have that particular data point at the high school level. So some people see those data and they say, well, much of this might have to do with the so-called self-selection effect, where, you know, if you think about these low-income students who end up in middle-class schools, maybe it's something about the family that's, you know, where they are care about education deeply and therefore are going to fight their way into a middle-class school, even if they have to have a tiny apartment. And so maybe it's the family, not the school, that makes the difference. And that's why this next study is very important. Looked at Montgomery County, Maryland public schools. I had mentioned earlier there they have the housing program in which some low-income families are permitted to live in middle-class neighborhoods because there's public housing in those neighborhoods because of the inclusive zoning program. And at the same time, Montgomery County has a policy in which they're going to spend, they spend about $2,000 extra per pupil in what they call the red zone schools. These are the higher poverty schools. And when you are seeking public housing in most of the country, particularly Montgomery County, you take whatever you can get because it's very scarce. And so these two policies, spending more in the high poverty schools and the housing program, allowed for kind of a natural experiment to see where do students do better. Would you, if you're a low income student, would you rather be in a middle class neighborhood with middle class peers, but have $2,000 less spent per pupil? Or would you rather be in a higher poverty school and higher poverty neighborhood where you will get those extra dollars? And Montgomery County was spending on things that were research-based. So they were spending on reduced class size in the early grades, better professional development for teachers, and extended learning time. So these were good things to invest in. And so Heather Schwartz, who's at the RAND Corporation, studied 858 children who were randomly assigned, some to the middle-class neighborhoods, some to the higher poverty neighborhoods. And this is what she found over time. So these are the scores in math. And the students in the green zone schools, these are the more affluent schools, for the first couple of years did about the same as the students in the red zone schools, the higher poverty schools. But over time, a big gap opened up, such that the middle class, the low-income students who had a chance to go to middle-class schools did far better, even though the green zone schools were spending fewer dollars per pupil. So the low-income students in the middle class schools saw the math achievement gap with their middle class peers cut in half. The reading gap was cut by 1/3. Now, the question becomes in an experiment like this, was it the neighborhood or the school that made the difference? Because these were low-income children who attended low-poverty schools but also lived in low-poverty neighborhoods. And Schwartz found that about 2/3 of the positive effect was due to the school and about 1/3 due to the neighborhood. Okay, so there's some positive.
Questions.
Yes.
Was that the actual, how did she interpret the school as an environment?
She looked at the variation between, there were some schools where the match between the school and the neighborhood wasn't perfect. So if you had you didn't have the fully advantaged neighborhood, but you did have the fully advantaged school or vice versa, you could see that variation. And that's where she was able to draw the distinction. So Cambridge is another example that I cited earlier of a school district that was trying to pursue socioeconomic integration, and they didn't do it through housing policy. It was straight through the student assignment plan. And in Cambridge, they weren't using compulsory busing. No one's really talking about that these days. It was a choice program so that every school had a particular theme or pedagogical approach. Essentially, each school was a non-selective magnet school. And then they sought to have an economic mix in those schools. And these are the graduation rates in Cambridge versus Massachusetts as a whole versus nearby Boston across the river from Cambridge. And you can see that for low-income students, African-American students, and Hispanic students, the graduation rates in Cambridge, which has the economic integration plan, are as much as 17 percentage points higher than for students in Boston, where they don't have the economic integration program. And white students continue to do quite well in Cambridge. There was certainly no negative effect on graduation rates compared to a place like Boston. Okay, so then the question becomes, well, why does it matter? So if research suggests that concentrations of poverty are problematic, why does it matter whether your classmates are rich or poor? What's going on in the classroom that makes a difference? And researchers have really focused on three things, each related to kind of the three sets of actors in any school. So you have students, your classmates in a school. You have the parents who are part of the larger school community, and you have the teachers along with the principal. And there are lots of data to suggest that it's an advantage on average to be in an economically mixed school as opposed to a high poverty school based on all three of those factors. So take the first one, which is your peers. Consider a given child, low-income student, let's say, who is either going to be in a high-poverty school or an economically mixed school. What sort of differences is she likely to face in those two environments? Well, we know, first of all, that in the higher poverty schools, on average, there are much higher levels of disorder in the classroom and examples of teacher disrespect. So these are from polls of teachers and nationally. And we find that on average, there are higher levels of teacher disrespect in the high poverty schools. Secondly, you're going to have classmates who are moving a lot more often. There's much more mobility in high poverty schools. Low-income families have to move more often, and so that's usually focused on as in terms of the individual child. It's can be difficult for a child if she has to move schools often. But my point here is in terms of classmates. And so if you are a low-income student in a high-poverty school or a low-income school, you are likely to have your classmates coming in and out of class much more often during the course of a school year than if you're in an economically mixed school. And any teacher will tell you how disruptive that is. That when new students come into a classroom, the new student has to adjust and become reacquainted to the different environment in the school. The third piece has to do with academic achievement, and it's an advantage on average for a low-income student to have some classmates who are more who are achieving academically at a higher level. So take the example of peer vocabulary, which is something that the Coleman really focused on. We know that middle-class students have much larger vocabularies on average than low-income students. So a low-income student in an economically mixed school is surrounded by peers who have larger vocabularies, and can benefit from that effect through peer vocabulary. So let me pause here and say, in no way am I blaming low-income students for any of these things. In no way are they responsible for the fact that they come to school on average with smaller vocabularies. And I'm not blaming the parents either. But it's a reality that these differences exist in the vocabulary size, for example. And so a low-income student who is in a high-poverty school is less likely to be exposed to that enriching vocabulary, is more likely to be in an environment where students are coming in and out of the classroom all year long, and is more likely to see higher levels of teacher disrespect. So that has to do with the classmates. The second piece has to do with the parents. And we know that parental involvement in schools varies dramatically by socioeconomic status. Again, I want to underline, in no way am I blaming low-income parents for the fact that they are less likely to be members of the PTA, less likely to volunteer in class. If you are a struggling parent who's working 3 jobs and doesn't have a car to get to the PTA meeting, it's totally understandable that there are lower levels of involvement. Nevertheless, there's lots of research to connect higher levels of parental involvement in a school with stronger academic outcomes for students. All students benefit when some parents are volunteering in a school and are active in that school and kind of can be the eyes and ears and know what's going on in that school. And for a variety of reasons, again, having nothing to do with values, but rather with the ability, the flexibility in the schedule to volunteer in class, be members of the PTA, you can see that middle class or high SES families are much more active in school affairs. Now there'll be some affluent schools where the teachers will tell you the parents are a little too involved, they feel that way. But on average, it's a good thing to have that parental involvement. And then the third piece are the teachers. And in many ways, if life were fair, the disadvantaged students would get the best teachers because they need them the most. But we know on average the opposite happens, that typically teachers see it as a promotion to move from a higher poverty school to a middle class school. So there are higher levels of attrition. Teachers are more likely to leave high poverty schools. You have more teaching out of field. That is to say, a teacher who's trained in physical education, teaching chemistry, that happens much more often in high poverty schools. And students in or teachers in high poverty schools are less likely to have higher degrees as well. So when you put all those three things together, the classmates, the parents, and the teachers, they all add up to a reason a reason to avoid placing any students in extremely high poverty schools and finding ways to get that economic mix.
Yep, Rita, please.
Yes.
Break things up a little bit. Our high school across the street, my children benefited from, it's very diverse. So I'd say maybe it's a third, socioeconomically, free and reduced lunch, a third Navy population, military, and then a third that I think from middle-class families. My children benefited from it because of the diversity. When they went to college, the success that they had later on in life and in their jobs really related to their high school and being able, like you said, to communicate. But I know it's difficult when families move in and out of town, but the mix is the military in our community, which I think has been a benefit. It was a benefit for our children. So I think if it's just you're moving in and out because, you're changing apartments is one thing, but when you're actually moved, those children bring so much.
Yes.
So there is a little bit of a, it's not straightforward. Moving is
Yes.
not as good because I felt the military children had a lot more unique experiences and brought a lot to the classrooms, to discussions. But I'm wondering, when you take like a city like Bridgeport or Washington, D.C., where there's a concentration of poverty, and though they have these wonderful magnet schools and they try to attract people, and usually the children stay for preschool, maybe kindergarten or first grade, but then they'll go to a private school. So how do you have these, base these schools on socioeconomic if the middle class and above won't stay in those schools?
Right.
So, that's a challenge, I would think.
Absolutely. Let me, if I can comment on both of your points, because I think that's a really important one about the military families. That's a different type of mobility than is talked about in most of the academic literature, because certainly coming from an entirely different region, different parts of the country, internationally, would definitely enrich the classroom, and I think that's a great point. In terms of how this works in practice, that is part of the last piece of the presentation does go to that question, because it's not easy to do. But in places like Cambridge, when they were very thoughtful about creating different types of programs, they saw reverse middle-class flight. That is, there were actually parents coming in from private school because the types of programs that were being offered were particularly attractive to families that had been using private schools. So it is possible. It's I won't say it's easy, but there are some examples I'll talk about, and I can maybe it makes sense to skip to that. Let me get to that right.
That'd be good.
Yeah, because I'm so there's cost-benefit analysis stuff that suggests this is a good investment, even though it does require transportation, because you have to bring children from different parts of the community together. But there's research to suggest that it pays for itself. many times over. And then there's democracy, which is a larger point. But let me get to your, basically, to summarize this in 10 seconds. In the last couple of years, people are increasingly focused on the way in which schools need to promote our democracy, small d democratic values, and school integration is an important way of doing that. But let me go to the lessons from the other school districts, because I think this will make it concrete about what other school districts are doing in order to create integration. And there are 4 things I'll talk about here. The first is they're using choice and incentives. No one is talking about kind of Boston circa 1970 when children were shipped across town with no say in the matter. That does not work. But what does work is doing careful research into what parents are looking for, and then making sure that your school offerings reflect that. And then there's some other lessons that I'll get to as well. But let me go to that first one, because I think this is probably the most important point. The most successful districts in creating economically integrated schools are those that do research into the desires of families in a community. So what has happened in the past, at least, in a lot of communities, is people will say, we've got a high poverty school here. We'd like to get more of a mix of students. Let's try a Montessori program, or let's try an arts magnet. And many times those will work just fine. But we also know that nationally there are a lot of so-called magnet schools that are not magnetic. They're not drawing families. And so instead there's been a shift towards a research basis where communities conduct surveys of parents to find out, what would it take for you to consider using the public schools, particularly for parents who, might not even have looked at the public schools. They only are focused on private education. And if someone has a child who's particularly shy and would flourish in a school that had a very nurturing environment, and maybe was a smaller school and had smaller class sizes, is that one of the options that a school district wants to offer? Now, that wouldn't be good for every kid. Lots of kids want that big school where they can have lots of different choices in the curriculum. But in order to be attractive, it only has to be attractive to a subset of families. And so that's what a number of places have done. In addition, there are a number of communities that are trying to attract families into a socioeconomically integrated school by building upon the well-regarded or prestigious institutions in the community. And so I worked with the Pasadena Public Schools in California, and they are creating a particular school that is associated with Caltech because it's one of the leading research institutions in the world, and every community has that. This community certainly has military facilities and other resources that could be attractive to families if there were a particular pairing. So this is something different than Caltech, going into all the elementary schools and giving a lecture once a year. It's a couple of schools that Caltech would adopt. And in Groton, there could be analogous type of adoptions where well-regarded institutions develop a strong relationship with a couple of schools. And you may already be doing some of that. But that's the kind of thing that can turn a school around, because What we're really talking about here, in order to get an economic mix, you have to draw in families who have other options. And those are going to tend to be the middle-class families. And so you want to serve all students, but find a way to attract some of the middle-class families who might not now, might either move to another community at a certain age or might use private school. So, so those are the types of draws that can be important. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, the mayor, built some schools that were right near a number of kind of high places where employers had high density, because some parents would like to work, have their child, particularly elementary school students, right near where they're working. There's also the concept of franchising the popular schools, because in any community that I've worked with, there are a couple of schools that everyone wants their kids to go to, and then there are the rest. And so what can be done is that if it turns out that a Montessori school is wildly popular, then, more people want it than can be accommodated, then the logical thing to do is to create 2 Montessoris, 3 Montessoris, and to change the approaches used in schools that are underchosen. And then finally, these communities weight the lottery so that it's not just up to chance. And I know that's something that you all are thinking about or beginning to explore at some of the magnet schools. And there are details that I can give now or later about how to go about doing that. So those are some of the strategies that the communities have used. Now the politics can be very tough, and this is, I won't play the slide here, but in Wake County, North Carolina, which includes Raleigh and the surrounding suburbs I mentioned before, they had a very positive socioeconomic integration program. And then the Tea Party came in, took over the school board, and it got national attention. Stephen Colbert did a whole episode on it. But there, the good news is that the people who cared about diversity came back in and built support for a program to bring children of different backgrounds together. So in some communities, teacher unions have been very important. Teachers on the front lines know that they can do a better job if all low-income students aren't concentrated in one particular school. And so in La Crosse, Wisconsin, it was teachers who went to the principals, who went to the superintendent to say, we want a policy where there's more of a socioeconomic mix in the schools. Civil rights groups and faith-based groups who are very concerned about racial justice can see the connection between socioeconomic integration and racial integration. And business groups in a number of communities have really fought for diversity because they want those employees who are going to be able to navigate diversity in the workforce. A couple of other things quickly, and then maybe we can get into any questions you have. Ideally, school districts don't just pick off a couple of schools for their socioeconomic integration plans, but start with a couple and then can build over time for system-wide goals. This may be getting far too in the weeds for you, but there are many different ways to define socioeconomic status, and different communities are trying different things. As I said, free and reduced price lunch is kind of a standard indicator, but there are other ways to do it, looking at census tract data that are more nuanced, that look at parents' education, income.
Does any the communities that you worked with use state insurance?
I haven't seen that, no. I mean, I think each state is now developing a better way of defining socioeconomic status than free and reduced price lunch, because you may have this in Groton. There are lots of places where they have the community eligibility provision, which allows, in essence, all the students in a school to get free lunch when you reach a certain threshold. And so now a lot of communities are looking at different factors. I haven't heard of that one being used, but I think that's a creative option. So, so there are different approaches to this, and one of the advantages to the using the census data is that communities have recognized that it's not just they're not just two categories, low income and middle class. There's really upper middle class, and low income. So so sometimes the groups are divided into 3 or 4, not just 2.
Do you know whether Connecticut has grappled with the definition of socioeconomic disadvantage?
I think through the Chef decision, they're beginning to do that.
Okay.
And then the last thing to mention has to do with the importance of ensuring that once there's an integrated school building, that it doesn't devolve into resegregated classrooms within a school building, and that teachers are trained and parents are made to feel welcome to capitalize on diversity. So at the Century Foundation, we did a comparison between 2 districts, Champaign, Illinois, and Stamford, Connecticut, and looked at their 2 efforts. In Champaign, they did a good job of integrating school buildings, but then didn't integrate the classrooms. There was severe tracking within the schools, and the achievement results were fairly mixed. Whereas Stanford, under the then Superintendent Josh Starr, they were able to integrate reduce tracking, adopt a curriculum that was particularly inclusive and anti-racist, used professional development to ensure that educators knew how to capitalize on diversity. There are a couple of other strategies to make sure that parents are all honored and there are signals sent that parents of all different backgrounds are welcome. So some schools make sure to have co-chairs of the PTA and consciously make sure that one of the co-chairs is from a more disadvantaged background and one from a more advantaged background. I heard about one school district where they were trying to be inclusive by making sure that the PTA meetings had a translator. And then one principal went even further, and she said, well, I'm actually going to conduct the meeting in Spanish and then have an English translator for the other parents. And it was an interesting way to make everyone know what it was like to feel at times like an outsider. And it sent an important message of inclusion down the line. So Stamford, Connecticut's results are quite positive through this, through the inclusive practices that Josh Starr put in place, and they're seeing some very good results. So I'll end there. I have a couple more resources, but I'm glad to answer any other questions that you might have about this type of strategy.
I think for me, I welcome any comment. I think for what has been so helpful, and I'm sorry that you feel like we're not being interactive with you, but is that it really helps us frame as we begin to think about these things, because it's really hard. I mean, we're actually, as a board, I'm actually very excited about this group of people, very proud of us, that we're actually looking at bias. We really are trying to really kind of take a look at all these things, and as we are moving forward and thinking about these 3 new buildings, the 2 new elementary schools, and I think all of us, we really wanted this one middle school, because 1, it's going to be right on our campus, but 2, we also knew that it really did help bring in our 2 sides of our town, right. And to begin to have that. So for us to even be thinking about that, I know when I first started on the board, and Reed, I'm not going to speak for you, but we were nowhere near having these conversations. And so when we hear our staff kind of talk about this is sort of what we need to be thinking about it, I think it really helps, it allows us to have a place to hang our hat. And so I really appreciate you coming in and talking to us about that. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm really excited. But Rosemary?
This is one of the, I think, the most important conversations we've had in a long time. And because it is from our diversity that we get the richness of our community. And I like that we're doing this out loud. And thank you. You know, this is my own personal experiences. I've had the opportunity to live next to a Blackfoot Indian reservation where I learned a great deal about community. I've had the opportunity to, my best friend was Navy, so I had the opportunity of learning, you know, from somebody from other cultures, and that's where the richness of my education came from. And schooling was wonderful, but the community was the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
This was just terrific. Thank you very much.
Rick, I'm just trying to operationalize some of this. So when you talked about separating into 3 or 4 or so subgroups by socioeconomic level, however that is defined, we'd have to clarify that. But then a particular school would say, through a lottery process, and that we have 2 of our magnet folks with us tonight, but through the lottery process, we would pick students based upon those 4 or so categories. And what would be I realize the Supreme Court has ruled, there's against using race as a quota. The challenge in Connecticut is we have that law that says we can't use race from the Supreme Court level, and the state law that says we have to have racially balanced schools. So is there research to indicate if we chose students, mix them by, let's say, a quarter each of those socioeconomic groups, that would result in racial balance?
So the most direct way, kind of by definition, to get a certain racial result is if you using race.
Right.
That's off the table. And
Right.
so even if your goal is a certain racial mix per se, using socioeconomic status is a very good way of doing that. And in particular, when I was working in Chicago, we were looking at different factors to consider in the definition of socioeconomic status. There are some that are particularly strongly aligned with race, or connected to race, and so you have to be careful, because if the Supreme Court thinks you're picking certain factors to get, only to get a racial result,
Right.
then that could be problematic. But if you are saying, there are lots of educational reasons to want a socioeconomic and racial mix, and we're trying to do that, then that's perfectly valid. And there are, Cambridge has they have written into their law that if socioeconomic status doesn't produce racial balance, we'll use race as a last resort, because the Supreme Court has suggested that may be okay. But interestingly, Cambridge has never had to invoke that requirement to use race, because the socioeconomic factors have gotten them racial diversity on their own.
Could you share, sorry.
I might be asking the same question. One of the things we had discussed was that in Groton we have pathways in our magnet program. So we have a STEM pathway kind of on the west side, STEAM at the Catherine Kolnowski, and STEM at west side. And then on the Cutler side, on the other east side, we have arts and humanities. So can you talk to how to ensure this social diversity when you have pathways?
Well, I think you want to be educationally sound, and so if students are on a certain pathway, it makes sense for them to continue along that route. But if it turned out that there, for some reason, was a were clearly identifiable racial groups or economic groups that were on certain pathways, you could consider the placement of those pathways into schools. And so what I mean by that is, let's say the arts pathway was particularly attractive with upper middle class people. There's an argument for putting that program in a more disadvantaged part of town because certain people are going to want the school that's closest to them. That's going to be the most important thing. And others are going to want a program that's going to be the most important thing to them. And in essence, you want to have, if you're trying to get an economic and racial mix, then you would put the programs or pathways that are particularly popular with a certain demographic on the opposite side of town, in essence.
And I guess it goes back to your point about making sure that we know the needs and wants of our community, too.
Right. Yes.
You were right, essentially what he was going to ask.
I was just going to say, could you repeat the sort of the lesson, I think it was from Kansas City, where they developed a really terrific magnet program and nobody came?
Yes. So these are the magnets that are not magnetic. And in Kansas City, the court, there was a school desegregation order, and the court said, well, the way to get a racial mix in Kansas City schools is to build, several Olympic-sized swimming pools, a model UN program that was wired for all sorts of different languages, and they put it into a disadvantaged community in Kansas, and no white middle-class families from the suburbs came. And the flaw to that was that it was literally, a judge in connection with maybe some consultants saying, let's see if this will work, rather than having that careful survey of families in this case, in suburban Kansas City, where you would ask families, what would really excite you? What would actually provide a powerful incentive for you to send your child to a different part of town where the program at the end of the bus ride was really attractive. And that's what is much more promising when there's a research basis for the decisions about themes and pedagogical approaches rather than guessing.
Thank you.
We had a board member for a number of years who was also an educator in our district and Teacher of the Year in Connecticut. His name was Chaz Sissoko. And I really have to give a shout out to him because he stressed this socioeconomic for years, and he felt it was so important. So, anyway, so I've heard this, and I highly support your findings and what you presented tonight. Thank you.
Great. All right, well, thank you
very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good job. Rick, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you you'd enjoy it.
All right, we have now reached the comics, the comics? Yeah, sure. We're in the Sunday paper now. What do you think, Ken? I'm going to try this one more time. We're at the comment section of our agenda, and this is where the board welcomes comments from the citizens, and each presentation should be limited to 5 minutes or less, and citizens should be, if possible, submit written comments. Presentation should be related to matters pertinent to Groton, and board members will only ask questions in order to clarify the speaker's presentation and cannot respond during comments from citizens portion of the board meeting. And citizens should make their presentations from the podium. Ms. Joan, do we have anyone? Is there anyone in the audience? All right. So obviously, if we don't have citizens' comments, we're not going to respond to them. And so we're now at one of my very favorite times is the student representative report.
Hello.
Hello, Eddie.
I'm going to start with updates from last meeting. On Wednesday, December 5th, there was a school culture and climate conference at Fitch, and this was hosted by our Renaissance Club. And this is where schools from around our region who have already implemented or are just starting to implement their own Renaissance Club, they all came over, they got a tour, they listened to a speaker, and they just discussed like different topics on how to create a better climate, to make a better school for the students. So that happened, and then last week the photo club donated Christmas portraits to local families where they could bring in their kids and get free pictures, and then the club got to get free practice for photography. Moving on to class council updates. Seniors are selling Fitch socks and planning for Mr. Falcon, which is coming up. Juniors are finishing selling chocolate bars, planning for junior prom and January fundraisers. Sophomores completed their first big fundraiser, which was a movie night a couple weeks ago, and are continuing to plan future fundraisers. And then freshmen are planning an upcoming Domino's fundraiser and are also continuing to brainstorm for future events. Unified Sports is having a fundraiser this Friday, December 21st, and where students can pay a couple dollars, donate to wear red and green. Fitch Music Department band and choir students are leaving over break. They're leaving Thursday, December 27th to go to London. They're going to spend 7 days there and then return January 3rd. So all the instruments, yeah, I'm going. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. So all the instruments are packed up, and we're just doing a couple rehearsals. So yeah, we're excited about that. And then finally, Renaissance Club is doing a December birthday bulletin board where we're going to put snowmen, like cut out paper snowmen, and then put people's birthdays on it, and then brainstorm for the coming months. All right, turning it over.
Just a question, how many students are going to London?
I don't know, I don't know the exact number. I think it's around like 40-ish.
But the total group is quite large, isn't it?
Yes, of everyone. Yes, there's a good amount.
I think
Yes.
about 100 adults and choral members
Yep.
and
A lot of
orchestra.
adults.
It's really
Yes.
quite an operation, logistically.
Oh my gosh, my band teacher is so stressed right now.
Do we
but
know the exact total of students going? Do we have?
I can get
We
that.
don't.
for you.
I'll get you that, but.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
I
find
saw
that
the
for you.
band rehearsing, and it's a
Yeah.
good.
It's a good amount.
core group.
Yes.
They'll be marching right down whatever street that is.
I have no idea.
Hopefully someone will will take a video.
Yeah.
I think you can stream it on YouTube.
Mr. Russell is going to document it.
All right.
Woohoo!
All right.
Dan.
All right, so in January, the Humanitarian Club will be having a Spam, tuna, and peanut butter drive, and it is for the Haitian Health Foundation, so all the products donated are going to go to Haiti. Also, Falcon Theater, they're going to be putting on their first play, Beyond the Horizon, by Eugene O'Neill. The show times are January 17th to the 19th. That's a Thursday to a Saturday at 7 p.m. And then they're also doing a Sunday afternoon show at 1 p.m. Tickets for students and seniors are $5 and adults $10. And then we're already halfway through the year. Midterm exams, second quarter and first semester, the big shabam as I call it, is coming up after Martin Luther King weekend. We have the 4 midterm days, January 22nd to the 25th. And it's an early dismissal day for students. And knock wood, those dates won't change because of snow. So, and then also, Fitch Athletics, the winter sports season is underway. Games and matches and competitions, they all start this week. Wrestling actually had their first match last week. And also some exciting news, congratulations to Nick Helbig and Tyler Nelly being named to the All-State CIAC football team.
Great.
Yeah, I read it.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. not a question. For the first time, I was able to see the parking places. I haven't seen them before. Abby, were you doing all the art? The art is amazing. The art is amazing. Have you all seen it?
Yes, I have.
It's just beautiful.
Dan did some of it.
What a great idea.
And you did some also, yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, we encourage anyone to go and drive up there. Sometimes I'll drive by coming home from cross-country or track practice, and I'll see people from the community getting out of their cars and walking around and looking at all of them. So it was a bigger community gathering than we anticipated, but it's very exciting.
It's very cool.
It was great.
All right. Superintendent and administration reports.
Well, the main part of the report that I wanted to be sure is that I fielded any questions about the middle school design. No one has actually, other than that people were very excited at what they saw and how the plans are coming along. I can tell you that the architects and the Permanent School Building Committee, we are going to be prepared in mid-January, I think the 15th of January. We will go up to the state, and so long as the board approves it and the town council, then we will make the request for all the funding to start to draw down the funding at about $50 million from the state. Rita?
I had a couple of different communications about people in the community that saw the plans and were very concerned that the solar panels were not on the plans yet, and I'm hoping that will change.
Right.
Especially since maybe we'll be able to save some money building the schools all at the same time and so forth, that we can do that, not just have the schools ready to put them on, but actually do it ahead of time.
We actually talked about that tonight at the Facilities Committee meeting. It is the recommendation. I am also, and if you could share those with me, I'd appreciate it, because I keep sending it to the Permanent School Building Committee. Not that this is insurmountable, but the glitch is that solar panels are not reimbursable from the state. So the town would have to do it at its own expense.
Why can a homeowner be reimbursed?
There may be some reimbursement for it, but yeah.
I think even for the electric companies are doing it.
Yeah. There are programs, and we're going to pursue that. But in terms of putting the plans for the state, they say that it's non-reimbursable. But like I say, it's not insurmountable.
Right.
And there is a lot of, I've received a few emails from conservation folks, and it would be great for lots of reasons. It'd be great to show,
especially the
renewable
location.
energy. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so perfect.
Yeah, right.
It's
So
perfect.
we'll pursue that, and Sam and I will push it with the committee.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I had one question, and sometimes I feel incredibly stupid. I was listening to where the school buses come in the middle school.
Yes.
But there are a lot of students whose parents take them to school.
Right.
So, but the only one door is going to be open to the students, and that's where the busing is.
No.
That's not.
There's two doors.
The parent drop-off door will be also open.
There's two doors.
Okay.
So it'd be
And
nice.
there's two
Anyone who knows anything about Cutler, for example, and probably West Side, probably all of our schools, it's super frustrating that the buses and the cars and the walkers, they all mix together, and it's really not a safe situation.
There's
so these
two different
architects,
entrances.
right? These are literally two. So one is on the fourth floor entrance, and the other's on the second floor.
So they will both be open.
Different
and
driveways even.
Totally
completely
different sides
driveways.
of the building and completely different access.
Driveways.
From, yeah.
Traffic separation, it's really,
Perfect.
it's really going to be good.
Once again, keep your questions coming, or comments, but just to know that we'll have our meeting on January 2nd. 7th.
And vote.
And we'll be voting. It'll be a special meeting where we can have a vote on, so that they can move forward with the plans. And so.
That's it for me.
That's it for you? Sue?
So last Last week, we had our Curriculum Instruction Council, our district-wide, where there's representation K-12 from every school. And it was really a full audience for this because we were reviewing the proposed courses from Fitch High School. Dr. Ackerman was there as well. And they have filled in all of their paperwork that is in the handbook that the board has approved. So they reviewed it. We had both teachers and department chairs, and it really amounted to about 10 half-credit courses. They're really trying to hook kids into like English language arts in meaningful ways, and unified arts where we have unified sports, and other art courses, health courses, business courses, and in the health, making sure that we have the social emotional component taken care of, and having kids be able to deal with stress and anxiety in the mental health part. So I was excited to see that. We also have 3 world language courses and about 4 CP, Careers Program International Baccalaureate. They won't roll out next year, the International Baccalaureate, but they're through the grant being supported to grow our careers program. So the next step is that we will have a Board of Ed Curriculum Council meeting with 3 of our Board of Ed members and the department chairs I've invited or will be inviting. And that will take place prior to the COW January 14th, where they'll also be able to bring you up to speed on, what's taking place. And then we're hoping to get them approved in the January 28th with the vote and the approval. And so we've got, several steps that we've taken and have given some feedback, and we'll continue to do that so that we really fine tune it so they'll be ready for you.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
And Sue, you, when we were taking a look at the Stanford, you were in that district while that was all going on.
Josh Starr was there prior to me, but I knew of his work, and he also was in Maryland, the other example. So I did see that. We also had a ±10%, so the schools were really rather diverse. But I have to, can I just make this comment? When I go into the cafeteria at Fitch, you see total integration. Sometimes you didn't always see that at the high schools. So it really is kind of the application of all that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. To the business manager.
Hello.
Hello.
So attachment 1 is our updated object code summary. This shows that we have an anticipated unexpended balance of $31,000. So
wow.
We're tracking pretty close to where we've been for the past couple months. We're on track at this point.
Wow.
Well, hopefully on Tuesday night, we'll pick up $17,500.
Yeah, we could increase it by 50%.
And then your other attachment is a health insurance?
The health insurance report, this is the report through October. The month of October was a very good month for us. We were at 69.6% of budget. That compares, we had, October's traditionally, it looks like it's a good month for us. Last October, we were at 64% of budget. So I think that's kind of a lull when these claims come in. So year to date, we're at 81.7% of budget. This time last year, we were around 84%, so we're a little bit better than where we were last year as a percentage of the budget. A note that we got some preliminary reports on our health insurance reserve. We beginning this year at about 4.1 million. So it's a good balance. We did anticipate using some of that this year with the cuts that we took. Originally, it was a bigger number, but probably be less than that because we are doing so well, and last year ended so well. So hopefully we'll be in a better position.
And Jay, will you be talking about the fact that we've been, Jay, that our budget books have been, that you'll be talking about that in your report? Okay. Okay. All right, Mr. Patrick.
Good evening. So I have 3 items I want to report on tonight. The first is the Groton 2020 project, and as Dr. Grenier noted, we'll be going to the state on January 15th for final approval after you vote on January 7th, approval of the plans that you saw last week in an excellent presentation. So the project does continue to roll along. In the meantime, after the referendum last week, the town has authorized Perkins Eastman to restart re-energize their project for the elementary schools and continue on the planning of those. The second item I want to report on is the water issues within the district that we're working on. And as I've continued to work in concert with the Department of Public Health and Ledgelight Health District, our technicians, our plumbers, and boiler guys are continuing to make the changes, repairs that were recommended by the Department of Public Health. Once those are done, and I'm hoping that they'll be done sometime in mid-January, we'll retest those areas and get those reports back to you and share them again with the state and Ledgelight Health District. The third item is the Northeast Academy indoor air quality issues. The engineering firm Fuss & O'Neill continued to do their study. They've got plans from us. They've got access to our HVAC system so that they can see what's going on there. And Ms. Landry, who is the head engineer on that, reported to me today that things are moving along well, and they expect to wrap it. Initially, they said that it would be about 90 days, so there's about another 60 days that we can expect to report at the end of that. Also, since my last report, there was an OSHA submission, or somebody submitted a complaint to OSHA with regard to the indoor air quality at Northeast Academy. Since then, the inspector who did that inspection and those tests at the school called me, and we did a phone closeout of that, and he indicated that he found no violations, that we were doing all the things, working again with Ledgelight Health District and the State Health Department in Mystic Air Quality to resolve those issues. He also noted that, I also informed that we're working with an engineer to take a look at our systems. And so we are now waiting for the actual written report that actually states that, and at that time I'll share it with the teachers, the union, the faculty, and so on at Northeast Academy, as well as you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, let's move on to the committee reports. Dr. Grenier, on our in each spot, we got it at page 2. Is there a difference?
It's been corrected.
I think it was,
Is there a change in one of the
There's a little typo.
Oh, one of the gifts.
Oh, where it says,
I don't think there's any errors.
okay.
I think it's only
Oh, I see.
Okay. Okay. So then I'm going to work from that. Policy, Lee?
Policy, we will talk about a reading for expulsion, I believe is our next one. I'm sorry for not remembering it.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that. We will meet again.
restraints,
The 4th, the 5th?
physical
Yes,
restraints.
and we'll talk again about our policy till January 3rd, 4th?
early in January.
Yes. early.
Do we know what date that's going to be? Because it wasn't,
It'll be Monday. It'll be Monday.
the first Monday is the 7th, which we're having a vote here, or a
Okay, so
vote-
can we have that an offline conversation instead of having it in the middle of the meeting in terms of the next date?
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's on the calendar.
Yeah, it is.
All right, and so curriculum?
We're going to be meeting in January, and we're going to invite the high school staff to talk about their initiatives. And that will be, well, Susan and I will get together and get a date for you.
Okay, great.
That was the date that I had said, the 14th. The
That's fine.
14th of January.
That's fine.
And finance and facilities?
We met earlier this evening, and we discussed the repair and replacement of the interactive whiteboards, a motion of which will be coming up later in this meeting. We had a discussion about what's the best way to go, given that the new schools obviously will have all new equipment, but we have immediate needs. Obviously, we've been discussing this for years, the gradual degradation of all of the whiteboards that were purchased all at once, and so it's been difficult with budgetary issues. But I think we've come up with a plan, and we're going to continue, Dr. Grenier and the staff are going to continue to look at that, but we're going to at least get started with some short throw projectors, which will work with regular whiteboards, but will sort of replace the interactive nature of a Promethean board at much less expense. And so we're going to start with that, using money from the DoD supplemental.
So that's going to be the Finance and Facilities recommendation, is to go with the projector, is that what you said?
Right. We had also looked at, and though we haven't completely ruled it out, we've looked at these active panels.
Yep.
But they cost about 5 times more than the projector. They also need very expensive stands, and so there's some questions that they're going to go back and determine if there might be some places where an active board would make sense. But in the meantime, we need to get started on those boards that are becoming, are moving toward being unusable.
Okay, thank you.
So we discussed the vote tomorrow night at Town Council about the minimum budget requirement, whereby the town is expected to approve passing on the money that we received for the students who were displaced by the hurricane in Puerto Rico. We discussed putting a placeholder for the non-union salary, wages, and stipends in the budget, getting that conversation started early in the budget process. And we had a lengthy discussion about solar installation. I think what's interesting is the chairman of the Permanent School Building Committee made it clear that the architects have left the possibility for adding these panels, so it hasn't been foreclosed.
Right.
However, as we know, these things have to follow a certain path, and currently the way the state works is they will not reimburse us for that. So we need to look at other grant opportunities or other ways to do that. Whether anything will have to be paid up front, obviously that would be on the town council to decide whether to spend that money up front. And then we received what you all have received, which is the budget draft. And so this is your homework.
Christmas assignment.
It was a Christmas present.
Yes, yes. And Dr. Grenier is asking that we all review this carefully, make notes, whether you use a sticky note or you do something electronically, come up with a list of all the questions so that we can begin to, as he likes to say, march our way through the budget after the break.
I really appreciate that we've gotten the budget book so early, so it does give a chance on our leisure to look at that.
And I would like to mention, we met with Natalie Burfoot Billing a few months ago, who was a member of the Board of Education for many years, in terms of creating in some ways going back to a budget presentation that has a lot more explanatory text, so that when people read the budget, they know exactly, for example, the staff that is assigned to a particular function and what that does. So I think you'll be interested to see all that.
Thank you, Jack.
It's not all complete. We have to give a lot of appreciation to Ken and his staff for putting this together so quickly, but they are still working on some of the explanatory information.
Yeah, there's a couple of areas that they'll be blank or maybe has some older information, but we're going to go through and get that all cleaned up before we start the whole process.
Thank you so much. Once again, it just gives us a start.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Do we have, is there also are the dates that we're meeting in here, or maybe we can get that printed off, and that would be lovely to
First
have.
workshop will be the 7th. and
Yes.
So we'll have it for you that night.
Okay, we can put it right in here, at the holes. Get all excited.
Yeah, all right, well,
Just remember, the next couple months, we will be each other's new best friend. All right, so I'm going to move us on. Rita, to learn?
Yes, we had a really busy meeting last Thursday. 3 principals from the Three Rivers College, the Marine Science School, as well as the one in East Hartford, which none of our students would attend. But they discussed the new state standards, the 25 credits that are needed, and it was really surprising to me that the state now is only recommending 1 credit of a world language. I was really quite surprised about that. 2 credits of a self-wellness course, 9 credits of a STEM and humanities, and then I think basically for the mastery-based diploma, 4 years of math, 4 years of English. And also the graduation portfolio, one school had, another one had a capstone project. And my question was, at Fitch, as a senior, is there a capstone project in place?
not required. But what will be required will be the 10th grade at the end of MYP. They call it, help me out, personal projects.
I was under the impression that the new state graduation
Well, we may-
requirements,
right.
you have to have either a graduation portfolio, an electronic portfolio, or a capstone, I know some of the schools in the area have, especially North Stonington.
It's a great idea, so we'll take a look at it vis-a-vis the new.
Yeah, it would be nice to hear from our staff at the high school to see how if they need to adapt anything to the new credit requirements from the state. After our meeting, we have a roundtable, and I really feel that Fitch needs to sort of toot their horn about this. The other towns were so amazed that we not only offered Spanish, but French and Latin and sign language. There is no other district in our whole area that offers that many different language options. And I just feel we should publicize that, because to me it's such a plus. We were also told that there will be no increase in tuition from Learn for the schools, our students that go to some of the Learn schools, which is wonderful, and the services also.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep, which is good. And the Ocean Avenue Learning Center, they're going to open, they're hoping January 3rd for students, which is great. And we also voted on the teacher's contract, which was very similar to the new Groton teacher's contract, percentage-wise and everything. So that was interesting. So it was a good meeting.
Thank you, Rita.
Welcome.
We did not have a liaison for the Board of Ed Town Council, the RTM liaison meeting, and we do need to get scheduled the liaison between the unions and the Board of Ed too. That's on my list to talk to you. And then we do not have Gretchen here to do the last 2. Did we?
Kim, I could jump in for a second. Just
please.
A global reflection on the budget document. This was my first visit to that committee, and it was like future shock for me. The document is attractive to read. It's simpler to read, very, very thorough, although people are going to continue to rework it. And what struck me was it really is a document showing the real vision and vitality around education in Groton. I just found it very unusual and just another exciting piece of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jane. So the next part that we're going to is our consent agenda. Wow. Speaking will happen maybe in a couple weeks. Is the consent agenda, and which is where we can lump things together. And I will take a motion for the acceptance of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? The motion has carried. The board would like to thank the Foxwoods Resort Casino, who made a donation of playing cards at $140 value to the Groton Public Schools for use with math games. The PTO at Mary Morrison Elementary School has made a $1,200 donation to fund a sensory path for the students to use at school. And the Mystic Oil Company has made a $500 donation to SB Butler Elementary School. And Peter Fairbanks, an employee of Pfizer, has made a $74.06 donation to the Fitch High School fencing team. And Pfizer has made a matching donation of $74.06 to the Fitch High School fencing team. And we would like to thank all of those people who have given to our school. We're going to now move on to new business. And Jay, I'm wondering if you would be willing to read the motion for number 1.
Certainly. I move we approve $10,500 for the repair replacement of interactive whiteboards.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Andrea, second. Discussion. Jay?
This is Dennis Kolkaw's recommendation.
Right.
He did a little bit of research, not quite finished with all the research, but the reason we put it on tonight is if the board approves it, we can essentially take that action immediately and see if we could get some of these things ordered over the holiday.
And the Finance Committee, you are feeling that this is really necessary to make sure that the students have what they need in order to learn in the classrooms?
Well, I think we've all been concerned over the years about the deterioration of the whiteboards.
Yes.
And so they've identified the ones I think that are most in need. And again, this is coming from the fiscal year 18 DoD supplemental, so this isn't coming from the operating budget. And but there are additional needs, but this way this is something we can get started with right away.
Okay. And the approved amount to what, Jay?
$10,500.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor to approve the repair or replacement of the interaction whiteboard to the cost of $10,500, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion has carried. Jane, would you be willing to read the motion for number 2, please?
Yep, I recommend we approve as a first reading policy 51441, physical restraint, seclusion, and regulations are 51441, physical restraint, seclusion.
Can I have a second, please? Second. I know that we're going to have some discussion, so Denise, if you would like to come to the podium so that we can have, or you can walk the microphone wherever you want to go. You can walk around the building.
It feels good to stand. I'll stand.
It's good to see you. Lee, do you want to frame the conversation, or Sue, do you want to frame?
Well, this has been, I would say, a 2-month at least job that Denise has really worked hard. There have been some new legislation. It's come to the board, to our policy committee, and it's also going to replace, which you'll see later on, P 5223. So we've kind of made it very comprehensive and tried to get everything in that's legally needed. So.
Right. So basically what we've done is we've brought the policy up to date with state regulations. This past summer, July 1st, 2018, there were several regulations that went into effect in relation to restraining and/or secluding students, and we're required to have them incorporated into our policy by January 2019. One of the first changes that I wanted to share with you is that there's been an additional criteria added to the definition of a physical restraint, and that is that a physical restraint now includes carrying or forcibly moving a person from one location to another. And we've been training our staff so that they're now aware that if they do carry a student, it obviously has to be within the criteria of the regulations, which means that it needs to be an emergency situation, such that the student is in danger of harming themselves or others. There's also, as I just said, additional language regarding forcibly moving a person. And this has to do with sometimes there's an escort that goes beyond just a brief touch or a brief guide, and sometimes there's a little bit more force that's used to move a student from one location to another, again, only in cases where it's an emergency. And that has been added to the definition of a restraint. The second change is the state has added a new term called an exclusionary timeout. An exclusionary timeout is a temporary timeout in which a student is continuously monitored by a staff member. They're removed from the instruction, and the purpose is primarily for de-escalation or for restorative practices. This oftentimes is referred to as a voluntary timeout or a timeout in a place like a cool-down area. Some of our classrooms have cool-down spaces built into the room. They're just little alcoves without a door, but they have a beanbag chair in there. They may have some preferred activities that students can utilize in order to de-escalate and calm down and then re-enter the instruction. So at this point, we are monitoring students that are removed from the instruction for the purposes of de-escalation, because we want to be sure that they're not missing instruction to the point where their learning is being impacted. And then lastly, the definition of seclusion has been revised, and that definition specifies that an exclusionary timeout is not considered a seclusion.
We have a question on the floor.
Denise, I have a question about the exclusionary timeout period. And it talks about holding a PPT as soon as it's practicable. And what do you do with the student who is in such a state that they're not ready to go back to the classroom, and you have to wait for a PPT? What do you do in between?
Well, there is a provision. Again, we've updated the policy in several other areas. One area that has been updated is the frequency that the PPT team meets. So if a student has been restrained or secluded 4 times or more within 20 school days, the PPT is required to meet to review what's happening and determine if we need to conduct another functional behavior assessment or revise the behavior intervention plan. Sometimes we'll increase counseling services. We'll just take a general look at the IEP and determine if something needs to change based on how the student is presenting.
I guess my real question is, though, what does practicable mean? How soon, how long is it that, because sometimes you have to get people from the outside, you have to gather all kinds of experts, maybe even a lawyer.
We
What
try
does that mean?
We try to convene the PPT within 5 to 10 days. So we're required to give parents a 5-day notice before we hold the PPT. Oftentimes, if it's an emergency, parents will waive their right to 5 days notice. So it can vary from anywhere between 1 to 10 days that we try to get the PPT together. For students who are placed out of district, it can be a little trickier because we're coordinating schedules with out-of-district programs and their staff and their schedule, but we do try to get together no later than 10 days.
I get that. I guess my bottom line question is, what are you doing with the kid? Where is the child or the student?
They're still attending.
There would be no meeting until de-escalation has been achieved. In other words, the situation has been restored to calm. And then only after that. In other words, this is not an in-the-moment kind of issue.
Okay, all right.
Is the parent notified right away of what's happening?
Yes, parents are notified immediately if a child has been restrained or secluded, generally via a phone call. Oftentimes it could be communication in a homeschool communication book or an email by the teacher. And then you have the reporting forms that were revised this summer that are attached to the policy. An incident report is completed each time a student is restrained or secluded, and those are sent home within 48 hours of the incident to the parent. and a copy goes in their file as well. And those reports are reviewed at the PPT meeting when the team gets together to review the IEP and determine next steps. One of the other components that we added to the policy is the fact that folks who participate in restraints or seclusions are trained. They're required to be trained, and we're fortunate to have 4 in-house trainers who train staff on physical management techniques. A majority, 80% of the training focuses on de-escalation strategies, and then a portion obviously focuses on the physical aspect of the restraint and the seclusion. So we're very fortunate that we're able to have our own in-house training. And we also specify that none of these strategies in terms of seclusion and restraint can be included in a student's behavior intervention plan. They're strictly delivered on an emergency basis. And by emergency, we mean a student is in imminent danger of harming themselves or others. And that's reviewed at the training as well.
Can we pause for a second and then just have Mark change our tape?
It should be time. My question still isn't answered, but I will.
What do you mean?
Oh, that's really. I just don't know. What?
It's like days after the incident that they have the meeting.
What the incident is ongoing? That's my question.
We might have to call the triple psych unit.
All right, we're back.
We're back. Okay.
And that summarizes the revisions to the policy.
Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you, Denise,
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, so for all those in favor to approve the first reading of policy P5144-1, physical restraint, seclusion, and regulations are 5144-1, physical restraints and seclusion, please say aye.
Aye.
No? Nay?
Opposed.
Opposed? Thank you, Rita. Opposed? And any?
Abstentions.
Thank you. And so there's one abstention?
I have a question about this. Denise, did you say that this, we needed to have this in place by January 2019?
Yes.
So my question is, do we need to possibly skip the second reading and push it through?
I think as long as it's in the pipeline,
It's all right?
I think we're fine. Yep.
Because there are times, you know, you can waive the second reading and move it along if we feel we need to.
I think that's up to the board, but we're implementing in this, in our schools.
We're
So
already implementing it, the people are already
Yeah.
being trained, so it's not like we're waiting
Right.
to implement the policy, actually.
Okay.
I think that if we find that it's not okay, we are going to be having a voting meeting anyways on the school design. We could always throw the policy on there if you were
On the
concerned
seventh.
about that.
Okay,
If
thank you.
want. Yeah, what the heck?
Not, unless there's major revisions. All right. Rosemary, would you be willing to read motion number?
Wait, somebody's joining us first.
I heard you say one abstention. Was that you?
Jay.
No. Jay, excuse me.
Nope. Thank you for asking for clarification. Rosemary, can you read the motion for number 3?
Number 3 is a motion to approve replacement of the policy P5223, physical restraint, seclusion, exclusionary timeout, with P5144.1.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Lee has seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Did we read the policy? Did we read the motion? No.
We just read the motion to replacement, and that's the,
That's, yeah.
The second part.
yep,
It's really to bring in line with Cade.
Right.
yep. Nope, that's great, thank you. So all those in favor to approve the replacement policy of P5223, physical restraint, seclusion, exclusionary timeout with P5144-1, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion has carried. All righty. So we are now on to please enjoy your break, Denise. Good to see you, thank you.
Have a nice vacation.
And so we're now on to the information and proposals or non-action items. And Rosemary, do you have anything?
I was not here for the last meeting, so I didn't get to tell you about that I attended the Fitch Athletic Hall of Fame, where I got to see my uncle and aunt initiated into the Hall of Fame.
How cool is that,
Yeah,
Rosemary?
that was very cool. They were not there, of course, but it was wonderful. I also attended a Sandy Hook Promise meeting.
My also understanding was that you were part of an interview today with.
I haven't read it yet. Yes. I also went to which is related to this, I went to the GASP Symposium on vaping, where we initiated a discussion of 5 professionals from different areas about vaping, specifically for parents, which was very, it really was well received and very well done. And
Awesome.
I also have attended a GASP regular meeting where I was requested to speak with Kevin Hogan, who I didn't know who he was because I usually watch a different news. And I thought he was maybe one of the new people from Governor Lamont's, that we were meeting, but it wasn't. And he interviewed me after Dr. Grenier on vaping. And it was very well. And I had, he actually removed cat hairs from my coat, which was quite an experience. And I don't know how they substituted that little old fat lady in with my voice. So, because I got to see it.
Are you on TV, Rosemary?
Yes, she was tonight.
I was interviewed, on Channel 3.
So anything else?
You could Google it.
Yeah.
He's a great watcher.
Yeah, he is a good guy. Former
So
bus
I
driver.
don't know where they got that fat lady, but.
Anything else?
I briefly participated in the Fitch Robotics food drive, but I didn't get a red hat. But I did get to go up there, but it wouldn't have gone with my outfit anyway. And I received some requests about solar panels for the new school.
Okay, good.
From the community.
If those are names that feel comfortable to give that to Dr. Grenier, I think that would be
yes.
very helpful
Yep.
for the permanent school building to know that there are many members of our community, or some members of our community, who's concerned about that. Thank you very much. Lee?
I don't remember what I did for autism. I was just going to look and see what I did, but I have no idea.
All right.
I talked to one person about solar also.
Okay.
And I had learned something about the chiller thing.
Yeah.
Chiller beams.
And I understood enough about it to be able to say something about it, but I don't know much about it.
If you'll pardon the expression, it's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm moving right along. Rita?
Again, the solar panels are also very important, and I did forward one lengthy email that I received to you, Dr. Grenier, so you can have that. And I also wanted to talk about Dr. Spira, who is the principal at the Marine Science High School. He had a compliment for students who attend Marine Science in 9th grade that had gone to Cutler and Westside, Groton students, and how well prepared they are for Spanish 1 and Algebra 1. And he said, we never have any doubts that they could go right into Spanish 2 or right into Algebra 2 when they get to there. He said they actually stand out from other sending towns. So I thought we definitely had to mention, and what a wonderful compliment that was for the teachers also at Cutler and Westside.
Rita, I'm very appreciative of tonight, as all board meetings, that you are really highlighting that Groton is actually a really great place to be educated.
Yes.
So thank you.
People, when at the Learn board meeting, when they heard about all our different languages and our IB programs and our AP classes and all the wealth of courses that we have at our high school, they said, we may move across the line, and just, from Ledyard and Waterford and Stonington. It was very interesting.
Nice.
I have a few people from Yale who want to come here.
Oh, really?
So, Jay?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge, as Rosemary mentioned, the Aluminum Falcons packaged 22,000 meals on December 15th.
Wow.
And also the Fitch baseball team received the Good Neighbor Award.
Yes.
I don't remember exactly what date that was. I also received a question, this comes up every year. We discussed it last year, and obviously we're dependent on the state, and that is the policy in Rhode Island and I believe Vermont about having prepared schoolwork for snow days.
Yes.
And I know the state has to approve such a plan, but someone approached me and said, could Groton be a pilot in that? I don't know where the State Department of Ed falls on their study of that, or if they're even interested, but
But the day counts.
Yes,
that's
the
correct.
days
The
count.
day would count.
It wouldn't count as
They
a
would-
snow day.
They would have,
Yeah, that's very attractive.
yeah, they would
Yes,
have this pre-prepared project to do. The teacher would be available, I
They
believe,
have to be
in the
available,
other
I think, for
states.
4 hours.
Right, so that either, by phone or electronically, so that,
Yeah. But
so we
enough-
wouldn't have to make up the day.
We have plenty of computers in our district. Maybe
Right.
that's.
But I do realize the state would have to approve it, so I just wonder if
Yeah,
they would.
You're right. The legislature would have to approve it.
Right, but could the
Is that
State
something
Department of Ed do a
Is that something we
pilot?
could kick to Learn? Just to see what Learn would be willing to do to help us think about that?
Regionally, yeah.
Would you be willing?
Wonderful.
Would you
Oh,
be
yes,
willing?
I'll bring it up at the next meeting.
I just read about that in Yankee Magazine or somewhere, one of the northern states, and parents were very accepting of it.
Yes.
Well, if you get a major storm and you're in the house for 3 or 4 days, I'm assuming that people would want to have that.
Right.
Jane, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Not really, I just was intrigued by the meeting tonight, that was just a wake-up call for me, that a lot is going on here. Since I've not been on the committee, I'm keenly aware and excited, because what I'm seeing in this district is that people are involved in making wise decisions, and the discussions are rich and important. There's a real vitality here that I'm not certain people on the outside are often aware of, because it's all low-key, just a very vital community in schools, and great things are happening.
Why do I have to go after Jane?
Yeah, I know.
But I love Lee, because I forgot, Lee, that I went to the Athletic Hall of Fame as well. And I saw Brian Hopkins, who was a student at Fitch. I guess we were middle school by then. And just a standout individual in all ways, not only in sports, but just always.
Who thinks the world of you.
Well, then, mutual.
Lee?
I did have another thing that many of us went to, and that was the new gallery, our gallery. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I had to actually look at my calendar to see it. But yes, it was again wonderful.
Really nice.
I love the fact that so many of our kids got on top of a little step ladder and had pictures with them.
Mark, thank you very much.
Mark was there, of course. Mark is always there. Yes.
Yep. So I was also at the art gallery opening, and that was, I find that incredibly special, and another way to showcase the talent that we have in the district. But I just want to share something with people, is that I got to go to the orchestra concert because I was the reader for the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And that was a lifetime dream of mine, because I memorized that whole book when I was 10 years old. And so to be able to do it with an incredible orchestra behind me, my life could end today, and I would consider it complete. So I was able to go to that, and just incredibly beautiful music about what people can do in the elementary and middle school. And though that even though the high school is a small orchestra, powerful. Just absolutely powerful, the music that they're producing. And then I also attended the craft vendor fair that was sponsored by the food service. group to help cover the cost of the unpaid school lunch balances. So I just wanted to let you know I went to that. Thank you, Rita, for continuously reminding me we have volunteer hours. And it looks like for the total, and this is going up to November, not through December, is that we have volunteer hours of total of 4,904 hours that are being donated to our schools in various different schools. And so I think that that is speaking of itself. Just making sure that people are aware that we have our meetings on our list. And also really paying attention to the May 7th is going to be January 7th, which is, it's not on here,
Right.
is the...
At 6 p.m. there'll be a meeting.
Right. Okay. And so, is there anything else, folks? And that we will also be having our meeting dates?
I just want to mention, obviously, we all went to the last COW where they presented the plan for the middle school, which has been a long time in coming. All of you have been working on this for many years, and it's the culmination of that. That meeting was taped. I don't know if it's in the rotation yet because I forgot to look at the email from Mark.
Says it is.
Okay. So on Channel 19, people can see that presentation from the architects, and we finally are at the point where we see the light at the end of the tunnel on that, and it'll be a new day for Groton.
And I was excited that we had so many members of both the town. We had many members of the town council. We had some members of the RTM come to ask their questions. So I thought that was really cool as well. I'm glad that we invited them. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjournment on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion has carried.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
We'll see you next year.